Welcome to the Heart and Soul of Couples Therapy conversations with Jim Thomas, emotionally focused therapy and ICEFT trainer emeritus. We are in our first series, and the series is What Sue Johnson Would Want Us to Remember. This is episode 2, and the topic is Why Emotions? It's called Emotionally Focused Therapy. Why do we focus so much on emotion? Stay tuned.
Welcome to the heart and soul of couples therapy. Conversations with EFT trainer emeritus Jim Thomas and EFT supervisor Ed Peterson. These conversations are grounded in strength-based emotional work and applied attachment theory. Jim and Ed offer this mix of interactional and experiential learning as a resource to encourage you on your relational therapy journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello again, Jim. Great to see you.
Oh, it's so good to be here.
Well, I am super stoked, excited about this, our next video, which really will build on what we just did, talking about Dr. Sue Johnson. I'm going to hand it to you, Jim. What's the next topic of what Sue would want us to remember?
Yeah, well, in case people didn't see our first video, Ed and I have been working on a project, and we want to just offer as a resource videos that go into some of the micro moments, very specific things that are useful ideas in a good, vulnerable, focused couples therapy, attachment based. And we were prepared to start that series. And Sue has passed, died not too long ago, and I've been flooded with memories about her and her importance. And I texted you this morning and said, can we go in a different direction and talk about what Sue would want us to remember? And in my relationship with Sue, I have some relative confidence that I'm close. I don't know exactly what she'd say. And I know she said things in her last talk she had prepared that was read on her behalf at the EFT summit in Holland. And the second one, I think it's almost funny. Sometimes in core skills, I might say to the group when they were struggling with a question, I'd say, well, what does Sue first and foremost want us to focus on? And people would, throw out great ideas. And then either maybe a certified therapist or a supervisor would say it, or I'd say it's in the name. Oh yeah, emotionally. It's emotionally focused. You could hear in her accent. It's emotionally focused therapy, people. And she took such heat, such umbrage, it was so hard. And she would share some of these things to be this professional, this learned person, this person who's studying this and gone all in as a person and a woman who thinks important in the context in the late 80s and the 90s, and took such grief from some about emotion. Why would you make emotion the important thing? Emotions are to be managed, and emotions are a problem in a relationship, not a resource. Emotions are, you can get things done faster if you just teach skills or teach negotiation. She's arguing with a colleague at a conference at dinner that keeps saying these relationships are, they need to learn how to compromise and negotiate. And she tells me, I think it's in Hold Me Tight too, but she says, Jim, yeah, I was getting really upset. And I said, they're bonds. Oh my gosh, it's attachment. It's hitting her. The couples taught her how to do the therapy before she realized it's about attachment and what we talked about last time, that attachment distress is real. And her curiosity about emotions, and that she wanted a whole different direction. She started with like teaching they learn the cycles at some levels, and people seem to get better and have a kind of first order change, they'd say in systems theory, but it wasn't a deeper change. Right? And the couples pointed her when she asked what are the best moments in the best session, and they were invariably vulnerable expression of emotion. She told me whether or not the partner could take it in. We so much, if you're an EFT or you know about stage one, we so much want, if I can get Ed to open up to Karen, Karen will respond empathically, because empathic responsiveness is at the core of an attachment relationship. Sue would tell us the core of being a good therapist, empathic responsiveness. And Ed turns and shares something vulnerable, and Karen kind of rolls her eyes or says, "What about?" Or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is great. I mean, that's the role play that we had in our last video, Jim, is you had me go into an anxious spot, and boy, I felt it, and the distress was real.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think that you're talking about, because I know that your hope and my hope in this series is that we give some real practical tools, some real things, some things that therapists can grab a hold of and they can make a difference in their work. And this is the phrase that jumps out of me from what you're saying. And that is that as emotionally focused therapists, as attachment therapists, we're learning to work with emotion, work in emotion, instead of to talk about emotion.
Right.
That was the hardest thing for me to learn. Is I was quite good at summarizing and giving couples and clients good skills and giving them homework and getting them to try this. But boy, when I found attachment and Sue Johnson at EFT 8 years ago, suddenly at first it was very daunting. It's like, I don't know if I know how to do this. Right.
Right.
But it was this idea of, because I can talk about, yeah, this is what happens for me. This is what happens for me. But when you say to me, what's happening right now, it actually was quite daunting for me as a therapist. And that's really, as I follow my progress, and I've been told this, it really, I believe that I've gotten more effective the more that I've learned to work with the emotion in the emotion instead of explaining or talking about the emotion.
Yeah. This was the gift of my post-grad work. I went to a place in Boulder, the Colorado Institute for Marriage and the Family, with Suzanne Pope and Jan Rainack, a married couple. He was family therapist and psychiatrist. She was systems person and depth psychology, and she very much honored emotion. And I had this proto EFT. We would do these powerful live sessions, and Suzanne could come in the room and go towards a person, and within 3, 4, 5 minutes, access vulnerable emotion that hadn't been expressed yet. And her proto EFT was in families and couples. You're trying to access emotion that's not being expressed by a person or in the family. Where's the fear in this family when the 17-year-old had addiction and the 16-year-old just dropped out of high school? Where's the sadness? There's been a loss in this family. Where's the sadness? And it's emotionally focused therapy. But I want to make sure, if you're not an emotionally focused therapist and just wanting to expand your ability to be with people, that I want you to be able to watch this as a generalist and get something from it. If you're an EFTer, I'm coming from a pretty purist place about this. And I am saying, as I was honored to be the first ICEPT emeritus certified EFT trainer, which was a Sue honor. And I think it reflects a commitment. I've always wanted to understand what Sue was saying and do that and live that. I was fortunate to come in where what Sue was saying felt like coming home. I didn't have a big struggle with it. But yeah, that Sue over and over and over and over and over and over again said emotion is the focus and emotion is the agent of change. Where'd the dance metaphors come from? She loved dance as one thing, but she felt it as music, that people were listening to music, and emotional music. They were responding to something at a much deeper level than just thoughts, negotiations, compromise. You learn you're a this and I'm a that, and we learn how to live with it. You're a Capricorn and I'm a Virgo. You're an ENFP and I'm an INTJ. You're a withdrawer. I'm a pursuer. You're an Enneagram 3. I'm an Enneagram 9. And all these things may have value and use, and we want to respect when people, come in with things that are part of their context. But at root, at the basic, Sue was saying these are emotionally driven relationships. These are emotional bonds. Bloody hell. And she was willing to charge through that and keep going and keep going and keep going. And a lot of people remember her when she's getting like lifetime contribution awards, and Psychotherapy Networker is honoring her and forgetting she's still this young person who grew up in a pub. She's probably amazed and wondering, how come I'm getting this big honor? And the last thing she said to Leanne Campbell as she's in her last days is, keep this going. This mattered to her. It was an emotional pursuit for her as well as an intellectual one. She could see, like, this is better. This is better than what couples and family therapy has been. She's proud of the emotionally focused family therapy study group. It's emotional for me to remember her. I had a friendship with her. I have a regret. I have a deep regret. I was talking to Leanne about, I said, I should have come and visited her in Victoria. And Leanne said, she wondered why you didn't. Because of my own doubts and my own shame and stuff. I didn't think that I wouldn't presume to invite myself to Victoria. How many times in our lives do we let fear and shame and doubt get in the way of closer relationships? We let the cultural norm or something get in the way. It's an emotional model. And it's hard for me to do the work without being emotional. I have 2-3 day intensives I do, right? People come and I fall for these couples. I get to know them, and there's these breakthrough moments where my frustration and my intellect and my own stuff is, starting to take sides or something. And then this moment of clarity comes. And I'll tell you, one of the best stories Sue ever told me, we were just chatting, and she says, I recorded that one video where I didn't know it. I think it was at a Psychotherapy Networker conference. And she says to Rich Simon, where's the little room we'll do the therapy in? He says, no, you're doing it in front of 600 people. And she said, it was like one of these like auditorium seating. And she'd never, it's the no way. And he goes, yeah, it's all set up. The couple's fine. They're out there waiting for you. And she said, I walked out, Jim, and I was so nervous. I was so flooded.
Wow.
And I just was babbling. The vulnerability of telling me, and it was so grounding to me. I was anxious, and I'm just waiting. And then I saw a moment of sadness go through that man's eyes, and I locked in, and I forgot to go.
Yes.
Emotionally engaged. She wants us to remember emotion is the focus and the agent of change.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, one point, and then I think we should go into a role play and actually show this. As you were talking, Jim, I thought to myself, you could be making a video right now and giving a PowerPoint presentation with all the slides and all the different accomplishments of Sue Johnson and her quotes. You could be talking about her. But when you just got vulnerable and talked about your personal experience, especially that experience of regretting not having gone up to see her, that's what drew me in. That's what made me, I don't know what the word is, but that connection. And so as we move into a role play, let's see if we can help people understand better what it is you're talking about how you connect. What does it mean to go toward emotion? What does it mean to, like you said, if she just saw a little sadness in that man's eyes, what does a therapist do to engage with that? What does that look like?
let's do the personal revelation. You start to speak, and a part of me is like, wow, you got really emotional. I don't know, you didn't plan to share that about that regret. And as I share that regret, I feel this sadness, but I also have like happy tears that I got to know her. I didn't get to know her as well as some, but I got to know her better than most. And she believed in me. I had a transformational day. I never saw myself in this way, but I'm at her house, and it's the second time because I'm there to present an externship in Ottawa, and I have to do like 20 minutes in front of Sue to get, like show that I can hold the crowd and say something useful. And I've walked from downtown Ottawa. Anybody that's been to Sue's, you can walk along the canal and stuff and get close. It's a fairly long walk. And I'm wearing a t-shirt because it's a bit warm. And we're dinner with, there's a couple other trainers there, and people kind of break up and they've gone in to clean up. And Sue's sitting there and she got a glass of wine and she goes, bloody hell, a t-shirt. I thought, oh, she's going to tell me off for being rude and coming to her house in a t-shirt. And she says, why do you have a Be Bold t-shirt on? One of the boldest people I ever met. Oh. And I noticed the next time I went to present and train, I had the "you're a bold person" like stamp from Sue. And I'm like, I'm not going to let Sue down. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. But even when I share that story, I think, was that too much? I still have the 18-year-old, the long hair, dressed so poorly going to college, wondering how come other people know how to talk to each other so much better than I do, that we're always at risk. We're emotionally at risk. Just being human is hard. There's so many ways to be rejected, to feel turned away from, to feel not enough. And learning this model is hard. Trying to be with couples and families and people in an emotionally vulnerable way puts us at risk.
Right.
We know this from, empathic, warm medical people get better results. Having empathy, they get better results, but there's a cost to empathy we're going to feel with. And this is what Sue's teaching us in Love Sense when she talks about we're Homo sapien, the one that knows. And then she says, maybe we're Homo empathicus, a few pages later, the one that feels and feels with. And then she says, no, we're Homo vinculum, the one that feels with, and cares for. That we're meant to be caring for each other. And when Sue says the attachment distress is real, and we remind ourselves that it's an emotionally focused model, so it requires us to be emotionally present, and we're going to go in and be in it with people. We can't step back and just be back here. We have to come. So what does that mean? I have to feel my emotions. I mean, not to the degree the couple does, but I have to let myself be emotionally present. It's very hard to phone in couples therapy.
Right. And that's right. And I'm sure we're going to spend some time and do some episodes talking more about that self of the therapist. But you're exactly right, Jim. It's emotions are the focus. And if we want to be effective, and I'm sure anyone watching this wants to be more effective and help more people, I have to get better at, like you say, going toward being with.
And let's simplify it. There's like the emotional pain and anguish of life and relationship, sadness and sorrow, fear, panic, longing, I think, is important. It's some conglomerate of those emotions: shame, guilt, surprise, joy, the joy of recording with you, the joy that I have remembering Sue. It lights me up. Those things, watching her talk, seeing her videos, having conversations, laughs, these things, joy. We don't have to learn 192 emotions. It's about finding our own emotions and exploring them with others. So yeah, let's do that. We could go back to Ed and Karen, maybe.
Yes, let's do it. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I know, Ed, earlier in our session, you were talking about the job, the long hours that Karen works, that it's hard to even get a word in, right? Complain all over me. Karen did some explaining with me. I spent some time on her side of the street. And she said, well, Ed seems demanding. He doesn't take into account how tired I am. He talks about the days when we were out of college and we didn't have these big jobs. We rented. We didn't have yard work and all that. He's wanting something that doesn't exist anymore. This is why I think I get defensive, because he's unreasonable, she said. And you look so distraught, right? When she just said unreasonable, and look, oh, now I've been exploring with the two the idea that you seem caught in like a negative loop or a pattern or a dance, like you're dancing to music together that neither of you picked.
Yeah, it's shitty music, man.
Right. Turn and blame your partner now, boom.
Well,
And
it just, I mean, I don't know, man. Just, I don't want to say this, but it feels like she's just
wait,
one
wait,
on herself, Jim. She's just
wait,
self.
wait. Why didn't you want to say it before you say it? You said, Jim, I don't want to say this. What is it? What is it about it that makes you not want to say it inside?
I say how I feel. She's just gonna give me that look. She's gonna roll her eyes,
So
and
you're about to share an emotion with me, a sadness, a hurt, a fear, a longing, what do you, the thing you didn't want to say, I'm sorry I interrupted you, is what emotionally is happening, the thing that you wanted to say, but you don't want to say.
well, just that when I hear, what she said to you and you two were talking on the phone, just feels like I'm getting blamed. Um,
Mm,
feels like she's
ouch,
not looking at herself, and
ouch.
I just think like, how's this ever gonna get better, man?
Yeah, that just sounds like a sad thing to say to me. I feel sad hearing you say that. How's
Yeah.
this ever gonna get better? It seems like in our cycle, Jim's talking about some cycle or pattern we get into that you're telling me, Jim, Karen's really focused on her side and thinking about herself a lot. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be focused on me. Am I going to be stuck in this place with her for a long time? I can't get in. I'm
Oh,
not
it's lonely.
lonely. We sit there for a moment. I know it's our first session together. Just sitting lonely for a moment. I know, Karen, he doesn't seem lonely. He just seems mad. I understand that. I'll come back to you. I have time to come back to you one more time. I just want to create space for it lonely. I ask you where the lonely goes. What do you do with lonely?
Uh, what can I do with lonely? I mean,
Hmm.
I could go to my hobbies and hang out with my friends, but I want to hang out with her.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that she did get right was I do think about those times when we were first together and married, and I didn't feel lonely. Felt like, I mean,
Would you tell her that? Just tell her that right now. When I look back in the beginning, I didn't feel lonely. Can you tell her?
yeah, yeah. So Karen, when I think back to our early days after college, early marriage, I realized that, at that time I didn't feel lonely, and it was great.
It was great.
It-
What would be, instead of lonely, you felt, you experienced what with Karen?
oh man, God, we had fun.
Tell her, I trust you on this. Tell her we had fun.
Fun. I don't know if you remember, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. We we spent a lot of time in nature. We just had time. We had time to talk. We had time to
Now I
just
want the role plays to be realistic for our audience. So imagine Karen says, yeah, and then it became all about sex. That's all you cared about. And Ed's going to have an ouch. So imagine, and then it became all about sex.
See, I mean, that's it, Jim. I mean, what am I supposed to do with that?
So I ask you a question. This will be it'd be a goofier, off the wall therapist question. When Karen said it became all about sex, what happened to lonely?
Went
And what
away,
happened to the pleasant memory? Yeah. Where'd you go instead? Are you frustrated?
flew away to anger. Like,
Anger.
how
Yeah.
dare you? How dare
How
you?
dare you? Yeah. Anger. So what can we see just for a moment? I know we're about out of time. Just find a bit of lonely, a bit of that remembering. Sounds like you felt closer. And perhaps for you, one of the ways you felt closer was your sexual attraction to each other and being together, making love, the fun, nature. You had more time. You weren't as caught up in these big jobs you had.
Yeah, it's
And
that's
just find lonely for a moment. And let's try it. Let's, if it's okay to start to wrap this session up, would it be fair to say that often what Karen sees on the outside is more mad, frustrated? That you're often frustrated in this dance, this relationship?
I mean, I guess on the inside it's different, but yeah, I
Okay.
guess
And then the inside lonely, and I said it felt sad to me. Does your lonely feel kind of sad?
yeah, it's scared too, but yeah, it's
We'll go to scared later. How about that? We're just starting. We go to scared later. That's okay. I hear the scared. Maybe I want to remember the scared. Because you said earlier in the session, scared that we'll be like this for a long time. That's a scary thought. We try something real. Can you turn to Karen and say, in this dance we're in, if that's all right, or this pattern. On the outside, maybe I look mad and frustrated. On the inside, I'm often sad and lonely. Just try that. Real simple. On the outside, Karen.
yeah. I think in this thing we do, Karen, what you may see in me on the outside is that I'm angry or I'm demanding.
Mad.
Yeah. Um,
On the
but
inside.
inside I feel lonely and sad, and I don't think you see that.
And in our dance, what I do with the sad and lonely, can you give her a little insight? What do you do with sad, lonely?
Well, I mean, I think what I do with sad and lonely is I get angry and I come after you and I say what I want, and then quickly I just lose hope and just go away because I don't think I'm going to get it.
Now I'm going to presume that in the time I spent on Karen's side for the if you're watching, that I have something to have her echo. Karen, we didn't do this when you were sharing. You said that on the outside, you often look shut down and defensive, but on the inside, you feel overwhelmed and hurt. Is that fair? Do you think
Overwhelmed, sure, like overwhelmed, especially when I come home and he,
I'll do it for you? You don't have to switch seats. We'll keep it simple. So Karen turns and says, "Yeah, if we call it a dance, Ed, um, I get on the outside, you see me like pulling away or shutting down, and I'll get defensive when you're complaining. On the inside, I'm overwhelmed, and I think it's true. I think it hurts. Um, and then I say something to close. I appreciate both of you being willing to let me explore some of the underlying experience you have. You can see outlines of some kind of pattern or dance that you're caught up in. I think what you said, yeah, we're listening to shitty music together that neither of us picked. Um, and you started a little different exploration process. I want to find ways for each of you to share when we uncover something a little more vulnerable. I'll slow things down, have you share it, and to slow everybody down in the room, because this is my primary focus is your lived emotional experience with each other. The negative loop you're in is real and painful. Um, so that we can start to surface these things under the surface that are so overwhelming and feel so bad and hurt and makes you sad and lonely as a couple. Okay. And then, so I'll see you next week. Maybe we can explore this thing I keep talking about as like a cycle or a negative dance you're in or a struggle you're in. If you notice that between now and next week, things about the pattern, maybe you could bring those in. Or if you happen to notice some of the inner, more vulnerable things you experience, you could bring them to me, maybe rather than each other, till I get to know you better. I don't want you, if possible, to argue over the therapy in these first few weeks. A common thing that and you may do it anyway, a common thing that happens is we start arguing about how we're doing the therapy. We'll have those arguments here in front of me, if that's okay. And if you have those arguments, then we'll talk about that.
Well, yes, yeah, let me jump in, Jim. Is that what you just did there in the last 2 3 minutes? It feels like a move 5 and a tango. It feels like you are kind of tying a bow on the whole session. And it was interesting because there's still, as you know, I go to these emotions pretty quick in these role plays, and so it's still lingering a little bit.
Oh, sure.
And as you were saying that, it was comforting because again, I felt like you were taking an active role in this therapy and that you were helping to make it safer. And I don't know, it just felt like if I were really in that role play, I would be scared to death to walk out of that room and start fighting again. And so what you said there was calming and helpful.
Yeah. And I was focused on emotion without moving too far ahead, without expecting you to be emotional with me. I didn't argue about sometimes you were sharing your thoughts about things, but I'm trying to pick up we do this in English, right? We'll say I feel and give these thoughts about it. And I'm just trying to be with Ed and be with Karen in a way where I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the risk you have as wanting something more, if you can't get a word in, what do you want? You want in. I can't get in. I don't know how to get back in with my person. And if Karen's feeling overwhelmed and hurt and like judged for like working so hard on her job and stuff, then I'm like, oh, that must be painful. So you're probably sad and lonely. You're probably hurting and lonely. And I want to find those things in myself so I can be emotionally present with them.
Yeah.
And so I found myself feeling sad, or imagine Karen's part. Like it hurts. It hurts to come home and after long hours and kind of find out I've disappointed Ed again. And then how do I carry both of those? You're both in emotional distress, caught in a negative cycle together. You're hurting. You're both feeling pain and isolation, as she says, and hold me tight. How do I start to carry that without expecting you to change it?
Right. Well, let me just share one takeaway for me, and then I'd like you to finish this maybe with your takeaway from the session, Jim. But one is that, well, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I think the thing in the role play that felt the most effective was that you were honoring me, you were listening to me, and you didn't cut me off. I mean, you would interrupt at times, but you let me talk, and then you helped me see just a very, it was a simple exercise, but you helped me see inside of me how there's this relationship between anger and criticism on the outside and lonely and sad. And if I were walking away as the client in that session, I had to write down like what was big for me in that role play or that session, I would have written down, wow, like I know I get mad, but I'm lonely because I wasn't as in touch with the lonely and the sad.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And so for me, it was your pace. There's a gentleness to your voice. There's a slow rhythm to the way you talk. And I couldn't pick up on it until you just said it, but it does make sense that you were feeling some of the sadness that I was expressing.
Right.
I think I could feel that.
Hmm. Well, I watched Sue's work so often. She's slowing down. I mean, risk or no repeat, use images, their images, slow down, soften, simplify, use their words, slow down. You move too fast. We gotta let these emotions last. We're just kicking around in the couple's distress, looking for openings and going deeper. Ba-da-da-da-da-ba-da-da-da-da-da. Using things to slow ourselves down. Early after grad school, I present on this couple to my supervisor, Sharon, and I mean, his family, and I'm like, I'm all full and ready to go after 4 sessions. And she says, you need to slow down and get to know this family before you try to fix this family, and for uh, at least like a year at Denver Children's Home, this is what I wrote. Oh, maybe about 6 months on the top of my notes. I'd have like, let's say 9, 20, 1990. And it's the Jones family. And here's the beginning of my notes.
Slow down.
Slow down. And then later, I start, empathy, repeat. And for like 6 months, I've got empathy, repeat. I just keep, like, what can I do to slow myself down? It's hard because couples and families come in and they're so typically somebody, at least some person, is agitated and ready and wants an immediate solution.
Here's this was one that I did the same way in my first year or two. It was this.
Yeah, be with. Better to get good at one thing. I think about that in like DC and Marvel comics and role play board games, or these things. Characters have a strength and they play to your strength, and so okay, I have an idea for another topic, so why don't we hit stop on this one and let's keep going.
Sounds great. See you next time.
See you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Heart and Soul of Couples Therapy. Be sure to like and subscribe to catch all of our upcoming episodes. Jim Thomas operates the private practice Institute for Change in Lakewood, Colorado. You can contact him through his website at www.jimthomas.care or email at instituteforchange981@gmail.com. Ed Peterson and his partner Candace Peterson operate Peterson Family Therapy, based in the Salt Lake City area. Ed can be reached through his website at www.petersonfamilytherapy.com or email at peterson.ed.lcsw@gmail.com. All content is copyrighted and is intended for the use of mental health professionals and graduate students. Any use of this material without the express written consent of its owners is prohibited.